Okay. All right. So, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about some of the things that we learned at DevCon last year, or not last month. So let's go around the room and we'll start with introductions. Do you want to begin?
Earl Cook, Laser Solutions.
Sharon Spoker, 360 Works.
Joshua Rivers, 360 Works.
Sean Coon, 360 Works.
Dave Totten, Georgia Department of Community Affairs.
Christy Mac Advantage.
Gail Cook, Laser Solutions.
Jesse Barnum, 360 Works.
Okay. Oh yes, and I'm David Nadel from Blue Feather. So DevCon was last month, and I had a really good time there. And one thing that I've really enjoyed from after previous DevCons is when we all gather around here and talk about what we learned at DevCon. Because not everyone can go, and there's some really good information that you get going to DevCon. So we're going to take today to talk about some of those things. Then we had a couple other people who volunteered to speak about some things, and then they couldn't come here today. We have slightly fewer people than I was expecting. So we'll talk about some DevCon things first, and then we'll see what we want to do after that. We may talk about maybe do some problem solving with people with solutions, or just talk about other interesting things going on in the FileMaker community. So we got pizza delivered here late, so there's a lot of eating going on right now. So I'll get started. So one of the big things for me at DevCon each year is networking. The sessions are really good, but I like to go to DevCon a lot because it's a really good opportunity to meet new people, to get familiar with people everyone sees names online all the time on community boards and forums and things, and we come to the meetings and we talk about other people's solutions, and DevCon is a really good place to meet some of those things. And I was actually talking with some people at DevCon, and some of the people there, they said this was their first DevCon, or they haven't gone to a lot of them. They said, but they've gone to other technology conferences, and one of the things that a couple people commented to me and said was they found that everyone at the FileMaker DevCon was really friendly, but there wasn't a lot of networking happening. There weren't a lot of, everyone was going to the sessions and paying attention and going to lunch and things, but there wasn't so much networking. And so, and that's something that I benefit a lot from. So I wanted to just talk about some of the things that I do at DevCon for networking and how it's a good thing to do, some of the stuff that you can get out of it. So at DevCon they have lots of brunches that you can go to, and a really good, and these are just kind of networking things in general for everyone, not even just at DevCon. But we go to the lunches and the breakfasts, and you sit down with people at a table just like we're sitting down at a table here. And it's a really good, DevCon in particular is a really good opportunity to introduce yourself to all those people that you're sitting with. I mean, you have an hour break twice a day, or an hour and a half sometimes, and you pretty much have to go and sit with people you don't know because there are so many people there that you're, it's almost certain that you're going to be sitting with the people you're not familiar with. And those lunches are a good time to, when you sit down, to say, hey, can I sit here, and then talk with the people at your table and introduce yourself and say, oh, my name is so and so, and I work here, and these are kind of these are the kinds of projects that I do. You can always talk to people and say, are you a freelance developer or a consultant or someone in-house, and how many years of experience do you have with FileMaker? What kind of projects are you working on? What's something interesting that you've done? And I think those are good kind of icebreaker questions to get the conversations going when you're sitting at the table with a bunch of people that you don't know. Obviously, you have to talk a little bit between bites of food, as we're all experiencing here. But it's something that I was, like I said, it's something that I was talking with people about, and I think that we as a FileMaker community should strive to do more networking. I'd sit down at a table sometimes and everyone would just be sitting there kind of silently eating, and it can be hard to be outgoing and to start those conversations. But I think there's a lot to gain out of it. I spoke with people who were doing really interesting projects, working for interesting companies, and there's a lot of knowledge that you can share with people at your table. I really found that wherever you're sitting, just at a lunch or something like that, people are always willing to help you solve your problems. If you want to talk with someone and say, these are some of the things that I'm working on. Do you know about this? This is something that I'm having trouble with. You never know who you're sitting with. That might be someone who can answer those questions for you. So I think the breakfasts and lunches are a really good place to do that. They also have themed tables at the lunches. I don't know, do they have those this year too? I don't remember if those signs were up there. Where you can go to tables for specific topics. And if you want to talk about custom web publishing, there's going to be a table set up for that, and they'll have these little flags on that say, we're going to be talking about web publishing here, or FileMaker Go, or if you want to talk about security things. And these are those tables are there to focus those conversations, because when you're sitting down already, everyone at this table is interested in the same things that you are. So if there is something in particular, look for those tables and find those people to sit down with, and it's going to be really easy for you to talk about the things that you're interested in.
I find that it really helps to go to DevCon with a particular problem or question that you have in advance. Like, don't just show up at DevCon and see it and say, teach me stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good too. But it's really good to go and say, I have been banging my head against this particular thing for a month. I'm going to find somebody who can help me do it. In my case, what I go to DevCon with is like a feature request. And I'll corner every FileMaker employee at every meeting, and I'll be like, you guys really need to think about doing such and such. Perform script on server.
They'll all get back to the office afterwards and be like, I had someone come to me asking me about this, and someone else will say, I got asked about that too.
Yeah. Wait, that was all the same guy.
But yeah, and so that's another good thing though. You can talk with FileMaker employees there directly as well. All the engineers are there, all the marketing people, the sales people, and if you want to, request something or talk about specific features, they're going to have the answers, and they're going to directly hear your feature requests.
And from a networking standpoint, like I sat next to Melody, Sue, Sue, at the speaker dinner, and she and I had a great conversation, and I had never met her before, and she worked on all the data API stuff. And then afterwards, I had after DevCon was over, I had a question about how billing works for the data API. Does it bill you for all the headers or just for the actual payload? And I didn't know, and I didn't want to use up all my data to find out. And so, another nice thing about FileMaker is that every employee's email address is just first name _ last name. So even though we didn't exchange email addresses, I just, Melody _ Sue at FileMaker.com, and I sent her my question. She replied within like a day. I'm like, that was great. If I'd gone through tech support, it would have gotten escalated, and then somebody would have said such and such, So yeah, it's really nice to be able to just like get some personal context with people that know that because they wrote the code, to the question that you have.
Yeah, I had a similar experience last year too. There was a crash that I was experiencing with FileMaker Go, and there are two really good resources for problems like that at DevCon. So first is their tech support, what's it called, Tech Support Central. And you can go there with technical FileMaker issues, and they'll work through some of those with you if you're hitting a problem with something. And we found some thread synchronization issue that was causing FileMaker Go to crash, and I worked with the people there, and they saw my solution. They saw how to get it reproduced. I gave them a copy of it right there, and then they took it back, and it was fixed in the next patch.
Awesome.
Or the next update. So that was really good. A second really good resource is the Visionary bar at DevCon. And this is a place where you can just go, and there are people sitting there waiting to answer your FileMaker programming app development questions. You can go up there and say, this is what I'm trying to do. Help me do it. And I worked there for a little bit this year, and it was a lot of fun. So if you're experienced with FileMaker and you want to help other people, that's a good place to go.
And it's not necessarily a question of like, are those people going to know the answer or not? Because it's usually very experienced people. But even aside from that, just having a senior person to just talk to. Sometimes you figure out your own problem. Because I've worked at the Visionary bar, and people have walked up to me and asked me a question, and sometimes they knew the answer and sometimes they didn't. But even when I didn't, we had a conversation back and forth. And at least I was able to kind of ask them questions that made them say, oh, I haven't tried that approach or something. So,
And if it's something you don't know the answer to, maybe you learn about
Yeah.
that also, even as the senior person.
Mhm.
While I was there, I had someone, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head now. They asked about some feature of FileMaker Go and the app SDK that I hadn't even thought about before. And so that was a new thing for me to, I took some notes about it and I can go and look it up afterwards because it's something I haven't done. So it was, it was really good for me as a more experienced person, and it was also really good for all the people that I got to help when I was there, and there were lots of other people there helping other people too.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, walk up and get some free FileMaker help from people who just want to help. So it was really good, and so that's something that I really got a lot of out of FileMaker or out of DevCon this year, is networking and meeting people, talking to a lot of the names that you've been communicating with online. I spoke to some people who were like, oh yeah, I saw your post about this, and people who come up with different strategies. And it's really great to meet all of those folks and ask questions. And then I wanted to share my positive experiences and encourage everyone else to think about DevCon as a networking opportunity when you're there. And when you go to other events, to think about that as well. Just, I know it can be hard to take that first step then, but to get out there and say, hey, just sit down at a table and say, hi, my name is, whatever, and this is what I do, it can spark some really great conversations. So that was something really good that I got out of DevCon this year.
Well, in the past too, you had mentioned at DevCon you had networked and actually picked up some clients.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely
Talk about
happens
that
as
a
well.
little bit.
Yeah, and because again, you never know who you're going to meet when you're sitting down with some people you don't know, a whole table of people you don't know. And every year I've gone to DevCon, I know I've got clients from it, and the trip's paid for itself because of that. So it's been really good.
Speaking of that, next year DevCon is in Orlando, which is really close to here.
Mhm.
It's not that often that it's on the East Coast. So, if you're thinking about going, but you haven't gone regularly or whatever, this would be an inexpensive trip to go on. You can drive it, you can get a really cheap flight. It's the same time zone, which is nice. So yeah, I think 2019 would be a good year for people from our Atlanta group to go if they don't normally go.
Mhm. And Disney. Yeah, I told my wife about that. She's like, "We're going to Disney."
There goes your money saving.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, next year will be really good too. Okay, do you want to go next? Down to the table.
So you want to just talk? So I only went to one session while I was there. It was Clay Mackel's session on under the hood storage and queries, and so if you don't know Clay Mackel, he is, I believe, Claris employee number 2. So he pretty much wrote FileMaker, with a lot of other people. Chris Krim worked with him a lot, and I forget all the names, but Clay is definitely kind of the grandfather of FileMaker, and he still is very involved in it. He's the one that wrote the data migration assistant, and he writes all the plugin API stuff. So he's kind of my go-to guy when I have a particular technical question of FileMaker. So I always get his sessions when he does them. So he did kind of an advanced under the hood session talking about how FileMaker processes queries. And it was not only about processing queries. And David, is all this stuff online? You can go, anybody, whether you attended or not, can go to the DevCon site and download the materials, right?
Right now they have the slides up. The videos are not up yet, but I'll put the link for the videos or the slides and the videos in the description of the YouTube video.
But so like if any of this stuff, I didn't take awesome notes, but I took some. And so if this sounds like stuff that you'd like to know more about, go to the DevCon site, you can download his slides, which this is all explained in his slides. And at some point you'll be able to download a video of his presentation. Just jumping straight in, Clay is very technical. He's a little dry. He's got a sense of humor, but it's pretty information packed. So just a few notes that I took. Number one is how indexing works. I never quite understood the difference between minimal indexing and full indexing. I understand it better now. Minimal indexing is needed for relationships. So if you've got a foreign key and a primary key, you need them to relate to each other, you need minimal indexing. If you want to be able to do searches in text for like find this word somewhere in the text, that's full indexing. So a lot of the times you may not need full indexing on fields if they're just being used as primary or foreign keys. So that was good to have a kind of official explanation of what the difference is between those. You can create indexes from ODBC and JDBC, which I did not know, so that's interesting. And oh, this was also kind of interesting that I didn't know. If you have a relationship from, say, invoices to line items, and you want to say, find me all of the invoices that have pizza as a line item. So as I knew, invoice can only relate to line items if the foreign key in line items is indexed. But what I didn't understand is that it also needs to be indexed back in the other direction, because the way FileMaker does that query is it goes to the line items table, finds all the line items that have pizza somewhere in them, and then needs to essentially do a relationship back to invoices, because that's where the table occurrence of where you did the search. So you're not going to get a found set of line items, you're going to get a found set of invoices that have a related line item. And for that to work, the fields need to be indexed in both directions, so they can go down as well as back for the relationships.
So do you know, is it smart about doing that in the right order as well for searching? I know I don't know if I went to that session or something similar, and they said that FileMaker was smart about trying to search on indexed things.
Oh, to narrow it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned that on this thing. I have heard that before. Yeah.
I was wondering if you heard anything about what order it would search on those, go to the related table and then come back again, or if there
went
was
into quite a bit of detail. I only took notes on the things that I found particularly interesting, so that might be something he talked about. He did go very much like a step-by-step. Here are the steps that happen when you do the search. So he might have been talking about that, about how the query optimizer can like pick which fields to search on first. Let's see. Oh, for record level privileges, you can define calculations in record level privileges to say only allow them access to view this record if this calculation is true. FileMaker, I didn't know this. I thought that FileMaker always did the search, and then for every item in the matching found set, I thought it would go through all the records, running that calculation for every record to see whether or not you're allowed to see that record. But Clay was saying that in some cases, if the calculation is fairly simple and can be converted into an index search, it will just utilize the index to just do that search in the first place. So it's not having to post-process the search by going through and doing that calculation for every record. So that was good for me to know, so that I can pay more attention to doing my record level access privileges in a way that, only uses index fields as opposed to unstored calculations. Because I assumed it wouldn't make any difference, and it sounds like it does. Join results are cached and can be reused if they are still valid. So that means that when FileMaker, if you say, okay, I'll just keep using invoices and line items. If you're on an invoice and you want to go to the related line items, and there's 100 related line items, FileMaker will remember that in memory, that these 100 line items go with this invoice. And then if you still have all of those things in memory, and then you later view that same invoice, it doesn't need to do the query again every time it goes to display the portal of line items. It remembers which things are related to that. It's not just remembering the records, it's remembering the relationship between the records. And on the refresh window script step, there's a checkbox that says flush cached joins, which I never knew exactly what that was. That's what it is. I don't know when that would be useful. It seems like it'd only be useful if there's a bug, but maybe there's something that I'm not understanding. But yeah, if you do that refresh cache joins, then it will redo that query next time to find the line items that go with that associated invoice. For SQL queries, basically the bottom line that I took out of that, because we do a lot of SQL queries with MirrorSync. You know, for people that are using GDBC for syncing, we tell them that you can write a where clause to restrict which records you get. It sounds like anytime that you're doing joins and relationships, it's slow. Because FileMaker will internally create temporary tables to store the result of that join. And so that explains a lot, because we've noticed that SQL queries are really very fast when you're searching just on fields that are in the same table that you're getting your results from. And as soon as you do any relationships, it gets slower. And if you do like 4 or 5 relationship hops away, it gets extremely slow, which is not true if you're doing the search natively in FileMaker. You can search 5 relationship hops away. And I'm always impressed at how fast it is to do multi-hop relational searches. But when you're doing SQL, FileMaker internally is building these temporary tables that have all of the fields you requested across all the relationships, and then like post-processing them to give you the results. So that explains why SQL is slow for relationships. So that was really helpful information for me to figure out, that I can't solve that. So I need to find a different way to do these things. Updating a record is actually a delete and an insert. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. It also means that fragmentation happens, which is why saving a compacted copy can make a big difference. Even if you're not necessarily deleting records, if you just inserted records, and that's all you ever did was insert records, and you never did anything else, saving a compacted copy, I believe, would have no effect on the file size because it's already as small as it's going to get. If I know that if you delete records, you insert, delete, insert, delete, insert, delete, it's never really reclaiming the file space used by all those deletions until you save a compacted copy. I knew that. What I didn't know is that if you update, 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 that will also eventually lead to kind of bloated files because the update is actually deleting and inserting. And so there's all that space used from the old record place from those deletions that will be reclaimed when you save a compacted copy. And when you close a file or pause a file, it does kind of pause a file on FileMaker Server or close a file. It does kind of a very light version of the compact operation where it deletes blocks that are completely empty. FileMaker stores everything in 4K blocks, which doesn't necessarily correlate to records, but it stores things in 4K blocks. When you do a compacted copy, it actually like rearranges all the record data into as few 4K blocks as possible. But even when you don't do a compacted copy, if you just simply close the file or pause it, FileMaker will at least go through, find all the empty 4K blocks that have no data in them at all, and just get rid of those to reduce some file size. I don't know if I like that, because one thing I've noticed is that on very large files, it takes a very long time to pause them. And I never knew why, because it seems like all pausing should really be doing is like not allowing any new transactions to happen from connected users. And it doesn't seem like to me that that should be linear with the size of the file. But this sort of makes sense now that, if you have a really big file and you pause it, maybe the reason that it's taking a while to pause is because it's going through and looking for all those empty blocks. And we often pause our files on FileMaker Server because that's how our backup scripts work. We host all our stuff on Amazon, and we will periodically pause the database in order to run an Amazon snapshot, and then we resume the database. And I always notice that on my customers that have really large databases, that takes longer than it should. So now I know why. Again, there's nothing I can do about it, but at least I know why, and that feels better.
So there's no setting that you can tell it to not perform that function?
I guess the thing I could do is I could maybe send an email to FileMaker and say, you should really change this, because it feels like, first of all, files are way bigger than I'm sure that this feature was probably written in FileMaker 5 or something like that. And it probably makes sense in FileMaker 3 or 4 or 5. You know, I remember installing FileMaker Server 3 from a floppy disk. And so, you know, it makes a lot of sense to reclaim every 4K block that you possibly can when you're storing things on floppy disks. But now the cost to scan that entire file, the execution cost to scan that entire file is high, you know, because you've got users that are waiting with the beach ball. The cost of not doing that is extremely low because it's basically a few extra 4 kilobyte
Data storage is
blocks
cheap.
on drives that are hundreds of gigabytes big. And so it just seems like that might be some outmoded thing that made a lot of sense at one point in time, but doesn't anymore. So I guess I can do something about it, which is lobby with FileMaker to
Is there a
comment that
workaround,
code out.
a workaround on the pause?
I don't think so. I think, you know, if you close or pause a file, it sounds like it's going to do that, and you can't safely work with the file unless it's either closed or paused.
So
Even when you back up a file, it's still internally doing a pause, the last step in the backup.
to me, it seems like FileMaker, if they want to keep that feature, they should be able to keep track of when the last time it was paused and that full scan was done, and then just go like from the last time until now, or
Maybe
not
they do.
entirely the entire file, but like
Yeah.
every, you know, X amount of days or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe they could just do it on a close and not a pause.
Yeah.
You know, because you do close files every now and then, and that's a big deal. You expect that. You're not going to be bothered if it takes a minute to close a file.
Right.
But it's pretty annoying when it takes 30 seconds to pause it, because the reason you're pausing it and not closing it is because you don't want to kick the users off.
Yeah.
And
if you close it, you've already allotted for that downtime.
yeah,
Hey, I'm closing the file at such time, so
Yeah.
it's not going to be available. Do something else.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So that might be something I asked them about. It's not high on my feature request list though. My highest feature request list is them doing the thing that they did talk about a lot at DevCon, which I've been asking for a very long time, which is the ability to modify the structure of a file live while it's on FileMaker server, which would be super cool to be able to basically like apply a patch programmatically, like not with your keyboard and mouse and clicking around, but say, here is a description of all the fields that I want added and the layouts I want removed and the script steps that I want to change, go. And so that would like make it, that would solve every feature request I have. I was joking with Sam, I'm like, if they did that, we could even do like animation on the screen, because we could just continuously modify the layout structure to do what we want. And John, he mentioned that in 2017, John Thatcher did a session on server performance for web publishing and perform script on server. That's in the slides. I didn't write down the URL, but I made a note to myself to watch that because I think it would be really interesting. And that is it. That's all the notes that I wrote. Who's next?
Well, you guys know I'm more on the marketing side of things, and I only went to one session, which was aligning with Apple. So basically, the main point was that they want to focus on partnerships and having strategic conversations and really partnering with small businesses. And that was just the overall message. I think they do a lot of it with the Idea to iPad, is that what it's called, where we'll have a local developer team come in to an Apple store and they can kind of set up a solution. So that's one example of a partnership. And that's really all they mentioned. Personally, I think if they have a list there of the local developers in the community, it would be a good idea. So if someone, like a small business, comes in, they want development, they can refer them over. They didn't say that they did have that, but I think that'd be a nice idea. Or even if you are a FileMaker developer and you go into your local Apple store and just say, hey, I'm here, I'm right down the road, if you need to refer someone to a FileMaker developer. So yeah, that was my takeaway from my one session. To the point.
All right, the end.
So yeah, what are some other interesting things that I got from DevCon? It was a lot of fun this year. Food was good.
By the food measurement, this is the best DevCon there's ever been.
Although I heard it was like it was quite a hike to get to the food.
Hike is a relative term, but it was a long, yeah. It took like, I don't know, 6 minutes or something like that. To get
Oh, my
5 or
goodness.
6 minutes to get from the sessions to the eating area, which actually we notice as exhibitors a huge difference between a place like Phoenix, where the food vendor area that we are in is directly next to all the sessions. We get a lot more booth traffic in Phoenix. Whereas here, you got to go to the other end of the building and down 2 escalators to get there. It's not the end of the world, but there's no reason, like, the only time that anybody came there is if there's food. You know, whereas in like Phoenix, they would come hang out at the booths just between sessions because they got like 15 or 30 minutes free.
Right.
Whereas, you know, in Dallas, the place that we were at, you know, if you've got 15 minutes free, you're not going to spend 5 of it walking there, 5 of it hanging out, and then 5 of it walking back. Yeah. But the food was great.
What was the discussion on the runtime? Any pushback on that?
I don't think I ever heard runtime being mentioned.
They just mentioned it once, it's still a deprecated thing.
It's not gone.
No.
Well, it's not working properly.
Oh, really? I know they didn't add some of the new functions and stuff, but it's actually not
Well,
working.
you want to build a runtime anymore. Haven't been able to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unless I'm,
Missing something.
yeah, well, I have many files, so I still, have multi-file solution. And it gets about a third of the way through the files and just dies. So there's like end of
He
line.
needs help big time.
So none of your users need to network or share data with each other.
No, most of our users are small, just real small one-person organizations.
Does it work to just use FileMaker Go instead? Because that's free.
Of course, well, then you're running on, not everybody has tablets or a phone.
Right.
So
Have you looked at the licensing costs through SBA?
I've looked at the licensing things, and there's going to be a lot of upfront costs because you're buying and you've got to get your license. Well, there's SBA, and also there's the solution bundle.
That is SBA.
SBA, yeah.
That's SBA. Then there's another one too. What's the Business Alliance? So anyway,
SBA is the FileMaker Business Alliance.
okay.
But SBA is for when you're selling the product to people and you're going to buy like bulk licenses to sell your particular product that runs on FileMaker.
Yeah, but there were like two of the programs there that needed to get be a member of. I wasn't really sure there. And then also being buying enough licenses or whatever.
There's a minimum per year.
Minimum per year.
It's like 50 or something like that.
Right, and so a lot of upfront costs. Switching over that way, the way that I was figuring it out, and I said that it would be great if we were selling on the App Store or FileMaker had an App Store, and they just took the they cut off the top at the time of sale, rather than having to do an upfront investment. And so that's the big thing right there for me, is trying to figure out how. And then at the end of the year, you've got so many licenses. Do these roll over, or I'm not sure how that happens right there.
I wonder, do you have any idea of what percentage of your users might already have some iOS device, either a phone or an iPad or even an old phone or an iPod Touch? Or
We sell probably it's maybe 25% to have tablets or have iOS.
Okay.
Maybe 15%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
But when I look at
surprising.
the on the website, our web traffic is mobile is about 50%.
I wonder how many people, like, when you say 15 or 25% is what you sell to, that doesn't necessarily mean that, somebody who buys to run on a Mac or Windows box, that you don't know that they don't have an iPhone or a tablet. Like, have you ever done a survey question and send out like an email survey, like how many of our customers own an iPhone or a tablet?
Yeah, I haven't done that. Should do that.
Yeah,
And,
because if you find that 70% own an iPhone or an iPad, then I would just say ditch the Mac and Windows version and just make it an iOS only product, and then it's free.
Yeah. It's, for what we do, it's a good reference, but it's for doing what we do, sessions where there's a lot of detail. There's not enough real estate on the,
Definitely not.
not on the phone.
Yeah, even pushing it on the pads.
It would, right, it'd have to, have to add another 15 layouts to, I don't even want to think about it. It would hurt. But we do have some FileMaker Go based apps I'm working on.
Okay.
But because I saw this coming down the road, this freight train coming down the road.
Right.
It was going to hit us one day.
Right.
And it's here.
You can still generate the runtime out of older versions of FileMaker, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm doing right now. I feel like maybe have 2, 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5.
Okay, before the old versions.
Before the old versions start dying.
Yeah.
What's the latest, what's the
Last
newest version that you used to
16.
run times?
16.
So 16 generates them, okay, and 17 does
16
not.
does and 17 does not. And of course, if you call, tech support, they say, sorry, that's a deprecated product.
Right.
Imagine when they're building 17, they just move the stuff over and they're like, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Doesn't, yeah.
Bonus.
Yeah.
One good thing that happened, well, I've been fighting a router problem for months, about 6 months, and getting access and hosting our FileMaker Go. WebDirect. So I was on, for 6 months, probably 16 hours on the phone with AT&T, another 3 hours with FileMaker, about 2 hours with Apple.
Oh my gosh.
And finally, there was problems everywhere. And so, but anyway, it was mostly the router.
Just get a new router.
No, so just for FYI, at least when I had it AT&T, my internet would go out randomly, and it wouldn't allow me to connect to certain devices. So I went to Office Max and bought just a router, just a Netgear router or something like that.
Right.
One that I could sign on to my AT&T account through.
Yeah.
And when I did that, never lost internet, could connect to everything. So AT&T will have routers made for them, but then they're shipped to AT&T, and then they load their software on to throttle, to block, to do what they want.
Yeah, well, that's what happened is the internal configurations got changed. Things were working and suddenly things were not working.
Right after our internet went off, and phone went out.
So I've printed out, now that it's working, I've printed out, 25 pages of configuration for everything.
Yeah.
But when I was talking with Apple, then realized it was a FileMaker issue. Anyway, we reloaded High Sierra and all this stuff. And they said, okay, well, hold on, let me get in touch with FileMaker for you. And they got in touch and right at a very high level of FileMaker support. And that coordination between Apple and FileMaker, I've never seen before.
Wow.
And
I've never heard of that.
Right, so I was very impressed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good when Apple acknowledges FileMaker as existing.
Rather than say FileMaker what?
Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah. Okay, let's go there.
I did a section on AWS, but I think you guys have all heard that. So.
Did that go well for you?
Oh, the session on AWS went better than I could have hoped for. And by the way, thank you guys for suffering through that, because it got a lot better after I did it here. I made a lot of improvements and rearranged the order that I presented a lot of stuff.
I want the files.
Oops, sorry.
Are the files up there yet?
The files are all up there.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I was waiting for,
I recently added a README. Somebody actually downloaded and tried it, and they sent me an email going, this is all really cool, but you need to explain how to do this better. So I added a README file that kind of walks you through all the different demos and how to try each one.
Okay. Remember the presentation I gave on the video segmentation on JSON and everything on AWS. So I had a video today that I needed to do, and I had forgotten how I'd done all that. And even though I had given the presentation on it, so I went in and looked, and there was just a couple little changes I made, and bam, it all worked. Oh, it was beautiful.
It's afraid of things happening quickly in our
I know,
life.
it's this unusual thing, you know.
Every now and then.
First time I got there, it failed, you know, permission error. And I said, oh, I didn't give my permission up on the file. You know, I'd given it on the bucket, but not on the file itself.
Right.
And so once they changed that permission, everything worked smoothly.
I find that a lot of AWS errors are permissions that they're root. Which makes sense, you know, I mean, it's really good that like not even their internal services can talk to the other internal services unless you grant them permissions to do it.
Right.
You know, which I guess is a good thing, but it takes a while to get into that mindset. And at first it's very annoying. Like, I'm just talking to one Amazon service. Why can't you just go get the thing from the other Amazon service without me authorizing it specifically? But they all kind of are siloed from each other.
Yeah. I really just want to take a look at your, how you authenticate with AWS.
Yeah.
Like what the process is, because that just to me is interesting.
Earl knows about that. That's complicated.
Yes, it is.
Roll it back.
I beat my head against the wall for about 3 weeks trying to figure it out, and found out that it wouldn't work with runtime. And it wasn't going to work.
No, because you need all those new encryption functions.
Need all the
that are not
encryption
in the
functions and everything. So that's the reason now I want to actually do it. I'm excited about getting your files, and
Okay.
I enjoyed your presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
On that,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. You know, you can also use our free Scriptmaster plugin with the runtime, and that can do all of the same stuff. That can do all of those encryption functions and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So that's a possibility too, if you wanted to ship a plugin with your product.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at
Elements also has some of that stuff too.
What those?
Base Elements. They've got a bunch of encryption things.
the one
Good
to
any
do
sessions?
I went to a number of business sessions.
Mhm.
I went to some like how to hire people
Mhm.
and how to, some business management things, because that's something that an area that I'm trying to make improvements in. And I think I went to the Under the Hood or some of it. I might have come in later part of that. And I went to another one that was about AI. And
Who was doing it? Was it Johan Hedman and I can't remember the other guy's right name right now.
I don't remember who did it.
Okay.
What it ended up, I mean, so I was thinking like, should I talk about that one? Really ended up being was kind of an introduction to chatbots.
Okay.
Didn't really involve FileMaker
Okay.
too much, and it was just more about here's this chat platform and here's some of the
Oh,
endpoints for that.
okay.
So I mean, if you want an introduction to chatbots, then
Yeah.
it'd be good, but it wasn't particularly FileMaker
Okay.
related.
Okay.
So the bot that they created queried data from FileMaker, but the implementation and all the work was just on the platform
I
side.
see. So FileMaker could basically easily get substituted with anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't the AI last year basically built around Tableau? I was kind of impressed.
They had they kind of did a partnership thing with the data API with Tableau. They had Tableau built a structure on their side to pull data from FileMaker really easily using the data API.
Okay.
And I guess that changed a little bit for 17. I don't know how they handled that because the data API changed a little bit between 16 and 17. I don't think that's an AI thing in particular. It's just for
Well, the guy who gave the presentation, he says, well, think about it the way that you're building your files and your front ends and everything, your business. It's really, you've got to think like AI or something. And he said it's a good step into AI.
I really want to do, I think it'd be very interesting to find a problem that could be solved well using machine learning. I haven't run into anything like that so far, but that's something that I'm really interested in, seeing some sort of FileMaker integration. Like I'd like to get an AI machine learning type solution that can maybe look at orders and see if someone has likely filled an order out incorrectly or some sort of form, and kind of learn the expected ways that people can make mistakes on things and check those areas and kind of do some validation, maybe or verification of of things and learn where the users are most likely to put data in incorrectly. Or kind of find exceptions and say like, this doesn't look, like you said you wanted 1,000 of these. That seems unlikely because it's kind of, and just have machine learning that can catch some of those things. I think that'd be a really interesting integration because it might help users entering data. Or generating forms in some way and helping or generating reports using AI to generate reports and figure out what people would be interested in, because the users don't necessarily know how to get all the information that they need exactly. Like they're like, I know I need a summary of this, but I don't know how to pull that out of the database, and it's not a built-in report. So I think that's an area that FileMaker as a platform struggles with, is letting users build their own reports. And if it's not something that you programmed into it, it can be harder for them to get it out. They have to like put it in Excel, and then they can do a report in Excel. But just for like one-off reports, it's not going to make a new layout. It's going to stay there forever. I don't know, I think maybe there could be some interesting integrations with machine learning and reporting in some way too. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't found I don't know a good use case for these things yet. But I'd be really interested in seeing what if someone has done something using that.
One of the kind of prerequisites to any sort of AI is a large amount of data to work with. And so I guess you could almost approach the problem from that direction. Instead of trying to say, what should I use AI for? Maybe you should think and start, what do I have a whole lot of data on? And then be like, okay, I know I've got 1 million records in this table. What is that information in it? And is any of it something that I'm curious about the patterns of?
That's a good way to look at it. I was thinking about that. Like I've got a client, they've got 10, 15 years of order history, and shops, they buy like snacks for shops and things. And I wonder if we could use something like machine learning and AI to look at that and try to figure out what shops are likely to want to reorder and when, to find some of those patterns.
Yeah, that sounds like the kind of thing.
And predict and say, hey, you're going there next week. They're probably going to need these things. Ask about that on your way there. Now, the client who does that is most likely not interested in having those kind of features added in, and the development time associated with that. But that could be a really good good tool. So
that seems like
artificial intelligence for me to tell you no.
I was doing a traffic manager for a graphics department, and so they had 20 years of data there, and they were trying to keep from burning out their graphic artists. They only had like 4 of them. So we'd go in and look at a new job would come in and look to see who had done it last time. And then I had to figure out all these schedules. I had to build a time system for everybody. And it would go in and pick the best person. And then if somebody was off that day or late or emergency, it would filter everything, would just ripple through and rearrange all the schedules for everyone. So I think that was a good one.
Cool.
But that was
It even talked.
oh yeah, it talked.
Yeah.
Come back.
Son Jesse, he's chilling right now. However, David's overstressed. Don't give him any more work.
Yeah, this guy, I was Sunday's overloaded. I said, check the pulse.
What do you call it? Simon. It's like Simon says for stimulated, whatever.
Simulated intelligent management over networks. And so if somebody bitches about getting assigned something, so well, Simon said it.
You have to do it if Simon said it.
But I was there, when it was picking this job has been picked, this graphic artist for this job. And one of the bigwigs came by and said, creepy, that is just creepy.
That all sounds like a much safer implementation of AI than Skynet.
All right. So let's get closer here. So what are some things that we could talk about at our meeting next month? What are some things that you guys are all interested in?
I don't think I'm not going to be here next month.
Don't say anything you're interested in. Last time you came one, somebody in the beginning of the meeting. And spend the next month learning what it come to learn.
I'm still struggling with the certificates, getting on server.
SSL certificate? SSL certificate?
Yeah,
You're using Windows Server?
no, I'm using Mac.
Okay.
I'm just running on Mac.
We've got a post on our website about Let's Encrypt certificates, and there's a little shell script you can download on Mac and run it, and it'll go and it'll generate a request, fetch the certificate, get it back, install it, and then renew it automatically. I want to make the Mac one is not as smooth as the Windows one because you set it and it'll restart your server every week right now. So I want to make some improvements to that so that doesn't happen, but it'll do most of the work for you automatically, so you can just run it every,
Okay.
run it manually every couple months. Okay. For now.
Because it's going with GoDaddy, and I think I've got my certificate. So can you start after you've already done your request and you've got the?
It's really surprisingly easy in 16 and 17
Okay.
to,
Make me feel
basically
bad.
you need three things. You need three things. You need your certificate, you need your private key, and you need the intermediary certificate.
Yeah.
And the certificate and the intermediary certificate you probably have from GoDaddy. And the private key you probably generated at the time you created your certificate signing request.
Okay.
So that's all. If you have those three things, it's really easy. You just go into that section of server admin, you say import certificate, has three buttons. Certificate, there it is. Intermediate, there it is. Private key, here it is.
Okay,
Go.
so you don't concatenate them. You bring them in all separately.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Because sometimes the things you do have to put them together.
You're right. In older
this
versions, pre-16, I think you had to do that.
Oh, okay. So that's what was throwing me off.
You're trying to do that,
I
you
was
need
doing
to.
it, but I
Well,
didn't need to. Yeah.
Also too, I noticed something with GoDaddy. So GoDaddy provides intermediary. Well, there's like the G2 something rather. That's their intermediary.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've seen with certain ones that that's not enough for some reason. Like providing that certificate in those intermediaries for whatever reason.
We're using a GoDaddy wildcard certificate, and we've had zero problem with it at all.
Yeah, I don't know which versions it is. I haven't used a GoDaddy wildcard. No, I've used the GoDaddy wildcard, and that one actually was fine. I've
never had this is the first time we've ever had a wildcard certificate. It's so nice.
Yeah.
It's so nice because we just bought a star.360works.com, and now we can have 20 different servers if we want to, and every person's laptop in here can all use the same certificate. And you just, it's Joshua.360works and Jesse.360works, and then we've got Jupiter and Mars and Venus.360works and those servers, and you just use the same certificate over and over again. It just works on anything that ends in 360works, and it's the same process. You just go in server admin, you say SSL, import, here's my 3 files, import them all, and then bam, you get your nice green lock and it's done. So now that might not make sense if you just have one server. But the process is still the same. It's just that you would do a different certificate signing request for each server. So if you have multiple servers at like lasersolutions.com, then the wildcard certificate might make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm just running a mini, and I've got it's my domain and my server on the same one.
Okay.
And so I wasn't sure there. I said, is it better to put just for the FileMaker server have it certificate on it, or do I need to have certificates on both for the domain and for?
When you say the domain, you mean like the website?
Well, I mean it is my my server is just my one little computer
Is it
there.
open
I'm just not
directory?
sure what you mean when you say my domain.
Like you're running the server app and it's managing your login credentials?
No,
Users or
no,
something?
it's just the DNS points to that one address, that one machine.
Which DNS entry? What's the actual address? Is it www.lasersolutions.com?
No.
Oh, okay.
Peachlaser.
Yeah. www or just
Yeah.
laser?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can use the same certificate for both.
Okay.
So you can order one certificate and you can do like just peachlaser.com, or you can do www.peachlaser.com, either one. And you can use that same certificate both for your web server to host your website, as well as FileMaker server to host FileMaker.
Okay.
Now, if they were on different boxes, then you would either need 2 different certificates or you would need a wildcard certificate.
Okay.
But if they're on the same box, you can just use one certificate.
Okay.
All right. How do we do this? I'll put up the links to the DevCon videos. And well, it's not videos yet. Videos will hopefully be up soon, but they've got the materials up in that. And everyone can look through those. Since the videos are not available, this gives us a good opportunity to go to those people. If there's a particular presentation that people here are interested in, let me know about it. I can go to those people and say, hey, we don't have any videos from those sessions. Would you be interested in doing your presentation again or something similar, maybe a shorter version of it for our developers group here?
Or was there one that you guys missed that you wished you had seen, that you didn't get a chance to go to on the session?
I don't know, we can look through it. I'll post up, there's, there's 100 of them or something. There are a lot there.
Mhm.
So everyone can look through those and send me an email and say, what you're interested in, and I'll see who can get available.
Sounds good.
And, so I'll get this video up it'll be on YouTube on the channel up there. The description will have the link to the session list with all the materials. So you can look at the materials then as well and go and look at some of the slides and things and see if it's something you're interested in. And then if it is, send me an email and I'll talk to the person who did it and see if we can get them to do a presentation. Send a couple. You don't have to just send one. Send a couple and be like, hey, here's top 3 or something like that. And we'll see what we can get.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Turn this off.